The crimson sun hung low on the horizon as Virginia Porter dragged her weary body across the unforgiving desert terrain of Arizona Territory, 1878. The dust coated her cracked lips, and her swollen belly weighed her down like an anchor. 6 months pregnant and completely alone, she had been walking for 3 days since the stagecoach driver had forced her off when he discovered she had no money to pay for the remainder of her journey. With only a small bundle of belongings and the child growing inside her, Virginia felt hope slipping away with each painful step. "Just a little further," she whispered to her unborn baby, though she had no idea where further might lead. Her husband had been gone for nearly 7 months now, murdered by outlaws while traveling to stake their claim in the West. The news had reached her 2 weeks after she realized she was carrying their child. The distant silhouette of mountains offered no comfort as the merciless sun beat down upon her. Virginia's vision blurred, dark spots dancing before her eyes. As her knees buckled beneath her, she caught a glimpse of something moving in the distance, a rider approaching. But it was too late. Her body surrendered to exhaustion as the world faded to black. The sensation of cool water against her lips roused Virginia from unconsciousness. Her eyes fluttered open to find herself in the shade of a small lean-to, a weathered canteen hovering near her face. "Easy now," a deep voice cautioned. "Small sips." Virginia blinked the haze from her vision to see a man crouched beside her. His face was partially hidden beneath the brim of a worn Stetson, but she could make out a strong jaw shadowed with several days' worth of beard. His eyes were a striking shade of blue, bright against his sun-darkened skin. "Where am I?" she managed, her throat raw and painful. "About 10 miles east of Copper Springs," he replied, setting aside the canteen. "Found you collapsed out on the flats. Dangerous place for anyone, let alone." His gaze drifted to her swollen belly. Virginia instinctively placed a protective hand over her middle. "The baby seems fine, far as I can tell. Been moving since I got you settled here." He stood, his tall frame blocking out the setting sun. "Name's Isaac Lawson. Most folks just call me Ike." Virginia tried to sit up, wincing at the pain that shot through her body. "Virginia Porter," she replied, accepting his help to lean against a saddle he'd positioned as a backrest. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson." "Just Ike," he corrected, then added, "Where you headed, Mrs. Porter?" Virginia lowered her gaze, embarrassment washing over her. "I don't rightly know anymore. My husband." Her voice faltered. "Thomas was killed by bandits on his way to Phoenix. We were meant to start fresh there. He'd sent for me to join him, but then the letter came about his death instead." She forced herself to continue despite the lump forming in her throat. "I sold what little we had back in Missouri to make the journey, but the stagecoach fare ran out. The driver wouldn't hear my pleas, left me at a trading post 3 days back." Isaac's jaw tightened visibly. "You've been walking 3 days. In your condition," Virginia nodded, blinking back tears. "I didn't know what else to do. The trading post owner said I could work for him." The way the man had looked at her made his meaning clear, despite her obvious pregnancy. "I couldn't stay." Isaac's expression darkened momentarily before he turned away, busying himself with a small fire he'd built. "You got family somewhere? Anyone expecting you?" "No one," she replied quietly. "Thomas was all I had, now it's just me and the baby." She ran a hand over her belly. "A child with no name and a mother with nowhere to go." Isaac was silent for a long moment, stirring something in a small pot over the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice had softened. "You need rest, Mrs. Porter, and proper food." He ladled a portion of beans and dried beef into a tin plate. "Tomorrow we'll head to town. I've got a small place there." Virginia accepted the plate with trembling hands. "I cannot impose, you ain't imposing," I offered. He sat across from her, his own plate balanced on his knee. "Copper Springs ain't much, but there's a doctor who can make sure you and the little one are all right." Virginia studied him as she ate, wondering why this stranger would show such kindness. Isaac Lawson appeared to be in his early 30s, with lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent in the harsh desert sun. His clothes were worn but clean, and though he carried a revolver on his hip like most men in these parts, there was a gentleness to his movements that belied the weathered exterior. "What brings you out this way, Mr. Lawson?" she asked. "Hunting," he replied simply. "Got a small ranch outside of town, not much, but it keeps me fed." He paused, taking a sip from his coffee, "And it's still just Ike." Virginia managed a small smile. "Then you must call me Virginia." As darkness fell completely, Isaac arranged a bedroll for her beneath the lean-to while he took a position near the fire. Despite her exhaustion, Virginia found sleep elusive as she contemplated her uncertain future. The baby kicked inside her, a reminder of both what she had lost and what she still had to live for. Morning came with a gentle touch on her shoulder. Isaac had already packed most of their small camp and had a cup of coffee waiting for her. Virginia accepted it gratefully, warming her hands around the tin mug. "We'll reach town by midday if we ride steady," Isaac explained, helping her to her feet. "My horse can carry us both. He's sturdy enough." Virginia eyed the large chestnut, gelding with apprehension. "I've never ridden astride before." Isaac nodded in understanding. "I'll help you up. You just hold on to me." With surprisingly gentle hands, he helped her onto the horse before mounting behind her. Virginia stiffened at the unfamiliar closeness of a man she barely knew, but as they set off across the desert, she found herself relaxing against his solid presence. "How long have you been in Copper Springs?" she asked over her shoulder as they rode. "Going on 5 years now," he replied. "Came west after the war, needed open skies after what I saw back east," Virginia nodded, understanding in her silence. Many men had sought new beginnings in the West after the horrors of the Civil War. "Were you a soldier?" "Union cavalry," he confirmed. "Spent most of my time in Tennessee and Georgia, not something I care to remember much." They fell into a companionable silence as the horse carried them steadily toward the distant smudge on the horizon that Isaac had pointed out as Copper Springs. The town gradually took shape as they approached a scattering of wooden buildings along a main street, with a few homes and businesses branching off to either side. "It ain't much," Isaac said as they entered the outskirts, "but the people are decent enough." Virginia observed the town with weary eyes. A general store, saloon, blacksmith, and what appeared to be a small church made up the main businesses. A few women were hanging laundry outside modest homes, and children chased each other through the dusty streets. It was a far cry from the bustling city Thomas had described in his letters about Phoenix, but it looked like a proper community nonetheless. Isaac guided his horse toward a small building with a wooden sign reading Dr. Martin Wells, physician. He dismounted first, then carefully helped Virginia down, his hands steady at her waist. "Doc Wells is a good man," he assured her. "Served as an army surgeon, knows his business." The door opened before they reached it, revealing a man in his 50s with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. "Ike," he greeted, then his gaze shifted to Virginia. "I see you've brought company." "Found her collapsed out near the Eastern Flats," Isaac explained. "She's expecting, been walking 3 days after the stage left her." Dr. Wells's expression turned grave as he ushered them inside. "Come in, my dear, let's have a look at you." Virginia hesitated, glancing at Isaac uncertainly. "I'll wait outside," he said, understanding her unspoken concern. "Got some business at the general store anyway." Dr. Wells led Virginia to a small examination room with a proper bed. "I'll need to examine you thoroughly, Mrs. Porter," she supplied. "Virginia Porter." The doctor's examination was thorough but respectful. He listened to the baby's heartbeat, checked Virginia for dehydration, and mixed a tonic for her to drink. "You're remarkably resilient, Mrs. Porter," he commented as he helped her sit up. "Most women in your condition wouldn't have survived such an ordeal. The baby seems strong, but you need rest and proper nourishment. I'd say you're about 6 months along," Virginia nodded. "Nearly 7, I think. And the father, dead," she replied, the words still painful to speak aloud. "Killed by bandits several months ago, doctor." Wells nodded sympathetically. "I'm sorry for your loss. Do you have somewhere to stay?" Before Virginia could respond, there was a knock at the door, and Isaac entered carrying a small bundle. "Doc, how is she?" "In need of rest and care," the doctor replied. But both mother and child are stronger than they have any right to be, given the circumstances. Isaac nodded, relief evident in his expression. Mrs. Porter, I've spoken with Mrs. Henderson at the boarding house. She has a room available. I have no money, Virginia reminded him softly, shame coloring her cheeks. It's been taken care of, Isaac said firmly. For the week, at least, should give you time to recover and figure things out. Virginia stared at him, overwhelmed by this stranger's kindness. Mr. Lawson, I cannot accept. You can and you will, he interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. Consider it a loan if your pride demands it. Dr. Wells smiled between them. I believe Ike's right. You need proper rest, Mrs. Porter. I'll stop by the boarding house tomorrow to check on you. Virginia found herself guided to a modest but clean room at Mrs. Henderson's boarding house. The older woman, a widow with iron gray hair and surprisingly soft eyes, showed her the washroom and promised a hot meal would be brought up shortly. Mr. Lawson explained your situation, Mrs. Henderson said kindly. You rest as long as you need, dear. Left alone, Virginia sank onto the bed, overwhelmed by the events of the past days, indeed, the past months. She had gone from a respectable married woman with dreams of a new life in the West to a destitute widow, dependent on the charity of strangers. Tears she had held back for too long finally spilled over, and she wept quietly until exhaustion claimed her. She awoke to a knock at her door. The window showed late afternoon light, meaning she had slept for several hours. Rising stiffly, Virginia opened the door to find Isaac standing there with a covered tray. Mrs. Henderson said you were still resting, he explained. Thought you might be hungry when you woke. Virginia stepped aside to let him enter. You've already done too much, Mr. Lawson. Just bringing food, he said, setting the tray on a small table. And I told you, it's Ike. Virginia sat across from him as he uncovered a plate of stew, fresh bread, and a slice of apple pie. The sight and smell made her stomach growl loudly, causing a flush to rise in her cheeks. Isaac smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. Eat, we can talk after. Virginia didn't need further encouragement. She ate with the desperate hunger of someone who had subsisted on meager rations for too long. Isaac watched her silently, occasionally pouring more water from the pitcher into her glass. When she had finished, Virginia sat back, suddenly embarrassed by her ravenous appetite. I apologize for my manners. Nothing to apologize for, he replied. You were hungry. Virginia smoothed her wrinkled dress self-consciously. Mr. Law Ike, she corrected herself. I don't know how to thank you properly. No need. He leaned forward, arms resting on his knees. But we should discuss what comes next. Do you have any plans? Anywhere to go after you've recovered? Virginia shook her head slowly. I had thought to continue to Phoenix to see if Thomas had left anything there, but I have no money for the journey. No way to support myself or the baby once I arrive. Her hand moved protectively to her belly. I never imagined finding myself in such circumstances. Isaac was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. There's work to be had in Copper Springs if you're of a mind to stay, town's growing. The mercantile might need help, and once you've had the baby. He trailed off, seeming to realize he was making presumptions about her future. You're suggesting I remain here? Virginia asked, surprised. Just an option, he replied with a shrug. Copper Springs isn't much, but it's a decent place. Good people, mostly. Virginia considered his words. She had no ties to Phoenix beyond Thomas's dreams. The city held no actual connections for her, no guarantees of a better life. At least here she had encountered kindness. I'll consider it, she said finally. Thank you for suggesting it. Isaac nodded, rising to his feet. Rest now, I'll check on you tomorrow. After he left, Virginia moved to the window, gazing out at the small town as evening settled over it. Copper Springs was nothing like the future she had imagined for herself, but perhaps it could offer the new beginning she desperately needed. Over the next few days, Virginia regained her strength. Dr. Wells visited regularly, pronouncing her recovery remarkable and the baby developing normally. Mrs. Henderson proved to be a fountain of practical advice about preparing for the birth, having raised 5 children of her own. Isaac Lawson appeared each evening, sometimes bringing small gifts, a jar of peach preserves, a book of poetry he thought she might enjoy, a length of soft flannel that could be made into baby clothes. He never stayed long but seemed genuinely interested in her well-being. On the 5th day, Virginia ventured into town, determined to find work despite her condition. The proprietor of the general store, Mr. Daniels, listened to her request with skepticism. "No offense, Mrs. Porter, but you're in no condition to be lifting stock or standing all day," he said, eyeing her protruding belly. "I can keep your books," Virginia countered. "My father was a schoolmaster. I'm well educated and good with figures." Mr. Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" "My ledgers are a mess, truth be told. My eyes ain't what they used to be." By the time Isaac arrived at the boarding house that evening, Virginia was waiting for him with barely contained excitement. "I've secured employment," she announced as soon as he entered. 3 hours each morning at Mr. Daniels's store, keeping his books in order. Isaac's surprise gave way to a smile. "That's good news. Daniels is fair if a bit gruff." "It's not much," Virginia admitted, "but it's a start. I'll be able to pay my own way soon." Isaac's expression grew serious. "Mrs. Porter, Virginia, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you." She sat down, suddenly anxious. "Yes. My place outside town, it's small but decent. 2 bedrooms, good well water. It's sitting empty most days while I'm working the ranch." He spoke carefully, as if measuring each word. "I was thinking it might suit you better than this room, especially once the baby arrives." Virginia stared at him, confused. "You're offering me your home, just to use," he clarified quickly. "I spend most nights out at the line cabin anyway, closer to the cattle. Place is just sitting there." "I couldn't possibly, you'd be doing me a favor," he interrupted. "Place needs looking after, I'm hardly there to do it." Virginia studied him suspiciously. "Mr. Lawson, if this is some kind of improper proposition." Isaac's eyes widened and a flush crept up his neck. "No, nothing like that, I swear it. It's just a practical arrangement. You need a proper place for you and the baby. I need someone to keep the dust from taking over my house." He removed his hat, running a hand through his dark hair. "I'm not explaining this well." Despite her initial alarm, Virginia found herself believing him. In the week since he'd found her in the desert, Isaac Lawson had shown himself to be nothing but honorable. "Perhaps I could see this house first," she suggested carefully. Before making any decisions, relief washed over his features. "Of course, tomorrow, if you're feeling up to the ride, it's about 3 miles outside town." The next day, Isaac arrived with a wagon instead of his horse, making the journey more comfortable for Virginia. As they left Copper Springs behind, she found herself enjoying the rugged beauty of the landscape. Rocky outcroppings gave way to stretches of desert dotted with sagebrush and cacti. In the distance, mountains painted in purples and blues provided a dramatic backdrop. "Land's not as barren as it looks," Isaac commented, following her gaze. "Spring brings wildflowers like you wouldn't believe, and there's good grazing for cattle if you know where to find it." They crested a small rise, and Virginia saw a modest cabin nestled against a stand of cottonwood trees. A small creek glinted in the sunlight nearby, explaining the unexpected greenery in this otherwise dry landscape. "The water runs year-round," Isaac explained as they approached. "One of the reasons I chose this spot. Good for the cattle, good for growing things." The cabin itself was simple but sturdy, built of logs with a stone chimney. A covered porch wrapped around 2 sides with a rocking chair positioned to catch the afternoon shade. As Isaac helped her down from the wagon, Virginia noticed a small vegetable garden, somewhat overgrown but still producing. "Been neglecting it," Isaac admitted, following her gaze. "Not much of a gardener." Inside, the cabin was surprisingly spacious. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace at one end. A rough-hewn table with 4 chairs occupied the center, while a comfortable-looking armchair sat near the hearth. Shelves lined one wall, holding an unexpected number of books. "You're a reader," Virginia observed, running her finger along the spines. Isaac looked almost embarrassed. "Helps pass the time, winters get long out here." He showed her the two bedrooms, one clearly his, with a large bed and simple furnishings, the other set up as a kind of office with a desk and bookshelves. Could be converted easy enough for the baby, he explained. I don't use it much anyway. The tour concluded in a small lean-to off the kitchen that served as a washroom. Creek's close enough to haul water without much trouble, Isaac said, and there's a proper outhouse out back. Virginia walked back to the main room, taking it all in. The place was dusty and showed signs of masculine neglect, but it was solid and warm, a real home, not just shelter. It's lovely, she said honestly, but I still don't understand why you would offer it to a stranger. Isaac leaned against the doorframe, studying her. You're not exactly a stranger anymore, and like I said, it's practical. Place needs looking after. There's more to it than that, Virginia pressed gently. He sighed, removing his hat and running a hand through his hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of his discomfort. Lost my wife and daughter 7 years back, he said finally, his voice rough. Typhoid took them both within days of each other. Couldn't bear to stay in our home after, so I came west. Built this place thinking maybe someday I'd. He trailed off, shaking his head. Anyway, it seems a waste for it to sit empty when someone could use it. Virginia's heart ached at the pain evident in his voice. I'm sorry for your loss, she said softly. Truly? Isaac nodded, replacing his hat. Been a long time now. He cleared his throat. So, what do you think? Place suit you? Virginia looked around once more, imagining herself here cooking at that stove, reading by the fire, rocking her baby to sleep on that porch. It was tempting beyond words. I would need to pay rent, she insisted. Once I've saved enough from my work at the store. If that's what your pride needs, Isaac agreed, but there's no rush. Consider the first few months' payment for looking after the place. They settled the details on the ride back to town. Virginia would move in at the end of the week. Isaac would stay at the line cabin most nights, visiting only to check on things and bring supplies. The arrangement was to be strictly proper, a business agreement between a landlord and tenant, Mrs. Henderson raised an eyebrow when Virginia explained the situation, but seemed satisfied with the propriety of the arrangement. Ike Lawson's a good man, she said. Lost his family young, been alone too long if you ask me. It's not like that, Virginia protested. He's just being kind, Mrs. Henderson smiled knowingly. If you say so, dear. The move to Isaac's cabin went smoothly. He brought the wagon into town and loaded Virginia's few belongings. Along with some additional supplies, he'd purchased extra blankets, a cradle he'd found at the mercantile, cooking ingredients to stock the kitchen. As they traveled the now familiar road out of town, Virginia felt a strange mixture of excitement and trepidation. She was placing a great deal of trust in a man she had known less than 2 weeks. Yet somehow, she felt safer with Isaac Lawson than she had in a very long time. The first few days in the cabin established a routine. Virginia threw herself into cleaning and organizing, grateful for the physical activity after her enforced rest at the boarding house. Each morning she rode into town with Isaac, worked her hours at the mercantile, then returned to the cabin while he continued to his ranch duties. Most evenings, Isaac would stop by briefly to check on her before continuing to the line cabin. Sometimes he brought fresh meat or vegetables from his garden. Occasionally, he would accept her invitation to stay for supper, though he always left immediately afterward. One evening, about 2 weeks after Virginia had moved in, a sudden thunderstorm rolled in as they finished their meal. Lightning split the sky, followed by crashes of thunder that shook the cabin. I should get going, Isaac said, rising from the table. Beat the worst of it. Virginia looked at him incredulously. You can't ride in this, you'll be soaked through or worse, struck by lightning. As if to punctuate her point, a particularly violent bolt illuminated the entire room, followed immediately by a deafening clap of thunder. Isaac hesitated, glancing toward the door. This is your house, Virginia reminded him. I won't hear of you risking your life just to preserve some notion of propriety. Take your bedroom, I'll be perfectly fine. After a moment's consideration, Isaac nodded. All right, thank you. The storm raged through the night. Virginia lay awake in the small second bedroom, listening to the rain pound against the roof. Occasionally, she heard Isaac moving in the next room, the creak of the bed, footsteps as he checked the windows. Morning dawned clear and fresh, the desert transformed by the rainfall. Virginia rose early to prepare breakfast, feeling somewhat awkward about the domestic scene she was creating. By the time Isaac emerged from his room, fully dressed and looking as if he'd been awake for hours, she had coffee brewing and biscuits in the oven. "Hope you don't mind," she said, gesturing to the stove. "Seemed the least I could do after you got caught in the storm." "Smells good," he replied, pouring himself coffee. "Haven't had a proper breakfast in this house for a long while." They ate in comfortable silence, the awkwardness Virginia had anticipated failing to materialize. There was something unexpectedly natural about sharing the morning meal with him. "I'll be back late tonight," Isaac said as he prepared to leave. "Got to check the herd after that storm." "Make sure none wandered off or got caught in any flash floods," Virginia nodded. "Be careful." Their eyes met briefly, and something unspoken passed between them, a moment of connection that startled them both. Isaac broke it first, tipping his hat before striding out the door. As the weeks passed, Virginia settled more deeply into life at the cabin. Her work at the mercantile increased as Mr. Daniels discovered her competence extended beyond bookkeeping to writing correspondence and organizing his inventory system. The additional income allowed her to begin setting aside money for the baby's arrival, now less than 2 months away. The second bedroom had been transformed into a nursery, with the cradle Isaac had provided positioned near the window. Virginia had sewn curtains from fabric purchased at the mercantile and crafted a small quilt from scraps Mrs. Henderson had donated. Isaac's visits became more regular. Though he still spent most nights at the line cabin, he now took breakfast and dinner at the house almost daily. Virginia found herself looking forward to these shared meals, to hearing about his day and sharing the small events of her own. One evening in late October, Virginia was kneading bread dough when a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching the edge of the table as the pain intensified, then gradually subsided. "Just practice," she murmured to herself, recalling what Dr. Wells had told her about false labor pains that might come and go in the final months. She returned to her kneading, only to be seized by another pain 15 minutes later. When the third pain came, stronger than the previous two, Virginia felt a gush of fluid between her legs. Her heart raced as realization dawned this was not practice. The baby was coming nearly a month earlier than expected. Panic threatened to overwhelm her. Isaac was out checking the herd and wouldn't return for hours. The nearest neighbor was miles away and darkness was falling rapidly. Virginia forced herself to think clearly. She needed to prepare as best she could. She managed to change into a clean nightgown and arrange the bed with extra sheets before another contraction hit, this one strong enough to make her cry out. As it eased, she heard the blessed sound of hoofbeats approaching the cabin. Isaac entered to find Virginia leaning against the bedroom doorframe, her face contorted in pain. "The baby," she gasped. "It's coming, too early." His expression shifted from confusion to alarm, then quickly settled into determination. "I'll ride for the doctor." "No time," Virginia panted as another contraction seized her. "It's happening too fast." Isaac looked terrified but moved quickly to her side, supporting her weight as he guided her to the bed. "Tell me what to do," he said, his voice steadier than his eyes. "Water," she managed. "Clean cloths." "Knife for the cord." He gathered the supplies with remarkable efficiency, boiling water and preparing the cleanest cloths he could find. By the time he returned to the bedroom, Virginia's contractions were coming rapidly, her body instinctively knowing what to do despite her fear. "I can't do this," she whispered as pain overwhelmed her again. "I can't." Isaac took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "Yes, you can. You're the strongest woman I've ever known, Virginia Porter. You walked 3 days through the desert to give this child a chance. You can bring it into the world." His words gave her courage. When the next contraction came, Virginia bore down with all her might, crying out as she felt the baby begin to move. I think "I think I see the head," Isaac said, his voice a mixture of awe and terror as he positioned himself at the foot of the bed. The next moments were a blur of pain and effort. Virginia pushed with every ounce of strength she possessed, urged on by Isaac's steady encouragement. And then, suddenly, the pressure eased as the baby slid into Isaac's waiting hands. "It's a girl," he announced, his voice breaking. "A perfect little girl." Virginia sobbed with relief and joy as Isaac carefully cleaned the infant and tied off the cord with string he'd boiled. The baby's first cry filled the room strong and indignant, belying her early arrival. "She's small but mighty," Isaac said, wrapping the newborn in a clean flannel blanket before placing her in Virginia's arms. Virginia stared down at her daughter, overwhelmed by love so powerful it made her previous suffering seem inconsequential. The baby had a dusting of dark hair and Thomas's chin, but her eyes, when they briefly blinked open, were Virginia's own deep brown. "She's beautiful," Isaac murmured, perched carefully at the edge of the bed. "What will you call her?" Virginia touched her daughter's tiny cheek, suddenly realizing she had never settled on a name. Thomas had wanted to name a son after his father, but they had never discussed names for a daughter. "I don't know," she admitted softly. "She has no father's name to claim, and Her voice broke. Isaac was quiet for a long moment, watching mother and child with an expression Virginia couldn't quite read. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "She was carrying a child and no name," he said softly, almost to himself. Then, looking directly into Virginia's eyes, he continued, "Then take mine and rest." Virginia stared at him, not comprehending at first. "Marry me, Virginia," Isaac clarified, his expression earnest. "Let me give your daughter my name. Let me care for you both." "Isaac," she breathed, shock evident in her voice. "You can't mean—" "I do," he interrupted. "I know it's sudden. I know you still mourn your husband. I'm not asking for everything a husband might expect. Just the chance to provide for you and the baby, to give her my name, to keep you both safe." Virginia looked down at her newborn daughter, then back at the man who had saved both their lives, first in the desert and now in this moment of need. "Why would you do this?" Isaac's gaze dropped to his hands, calloused and still stained with her blood from the delivery. "Because in the weeks you've been here, this cabin has become a home again. Because you're the most courageous woman I've ever known. Because that little girl deserves every chance in the world." He looked up, his blue eyes intense. "Because I think I could grow to love you if you gave me the chance." The baby whimpered, and Virginia automatically adjusted her position, soothing her daughter with a gentle touch. Her mind raced with the implications of Isaac's proposal. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something honest, something that could grow. "Yes," she heard herself say, "for her sake and perhaps for ours." The relief and joy that spread across Isaac's face made him look years younger. He leaned forward hesitantly, then pressed a gentle kiss to Virginia's forehead. "Thank you," he whispered. "I promise I'll be good to you both." Virginia looked down at her daughter again. "She needs a name." "Hope," Isaac suggested softly, "because that's what she brought back to this house." "What she brought back to me?" Virginia smiled, feeling tears well in her eyes. "Hope Lawson," she tried the name out. "It's perfect." Isaac rode for Dr. Wells at first light, returning with the physician and Mrs. Henderson, who took charge of the household while the doctor examined mother and baby. "She's small but healthy," Dr. Wells pronounced. "And you're recovering well, Mrs. Porter, though I understand it will be Mrs. Lawson soon enough." Virginia blushed at his knowing smile. "News travels fast. It's a small town," the doctor replied. "And Ike nearly broke down my door at dawn, shouting about delivering a baby and needing to find a preacher." Mrs. Henderson bustled in with fresh tea. "Judge Wilson can perform the ceremony once you're on your feet. He acts as justice of the peace when the circuit preacher isn't around." "I'd like to wait until I can stand properly," Virginia said. "It doesn't seem right to be married lying down." 3 days, Dr. Wells decreed. "That's how long you'll stay in that bed. After that, if you're healing well, we can discuss a wedding." The wedding took place a week later on the porch of the cabin, with Hope cradled in Virginia's arms. Judge Wilson officiated, while Dr. Wells, Mrs. Henderson, and Mr. Daniels served as witnesses. Isaac had ridden all the way to Phoenix and back in 2 days to obtain a proper ring, a simple gold band that fit Virginia's finger perfectly. "By the power vested in me by the territory of Arizona," Judge Wilson proclaimed, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ike, you may kiss your bride." Isaac hesitated, his eyes questioning. Virginia gave a small nod, and he leaned down to press his lips gently against hers, their first kiss, sweet and tentative. Mrs. Henderson had prepared a wedding feast, and the small party celebrated well into the evening. When the guests finally departed, Virginia found herself alone with her new husband and their daughter, an unexpected family created from tragedy and chance. "I'll sleep in the main room," Isaac said as he banked the fire for the night. Until you're ready for something different." "No rush." Virginia watched him from the doorway of their bedroom, his bedroom, which she and Hope now occupied. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Isaac looked up, his expression serious. "I meant what I said before. I'll be good to you both. I'll try to make you happy." "I know you will," Virginia replied, finding she truly believed it. Winter settled over the desert, bringing cooler temperatures and occasional rain. Hope thrived, growing stronger each day. Virginia recovered from the birth and gradually took on more household duties, finding satisfaction in creating a proper home for her new family. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, often carrying Hope against his chest as he performed chores around the property. He built a proper crib to replace the store-bought cradle, carving intricate designs of desert flowers along the sides. Their marriage remained unconsummated, with Isaac continuing to sleep in the main room while Virginia and Hope occupied the bedroom. The arrangement was comfortable, if somewhat unusual, allowing them time to build trust and understanding. As Christmas approached, Virginia found herself thinking more often of the physical aspect of their marriage. Isaac was unfailingly considerate, never pressing for more than she offered, but she occasionally caught him watching her with longing in his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking. The truth was, Virginia had begun to develop genuine feelings for her husband. His kindness, his gentle way with Hope, the quiet strength he exhibited daily all combined to create a growing attraction she could no longer ignore. On Christmas Eve, after Hope had been settled in her crib, Virginia joined Isaac by the fire. He had carved a small wooden horse for Hope's first Christmas, though the baby was far too young to appreciate the gift. "It's beautiful," Virginia said, running her fingers over the smooth pine. "She'll treasure it when she's older." "Just something to start her collection," Isaac replied modestly. "My father used to carve animals for me as a boy, seemed right to continue the tradition." Virginia set the horse aside and reached for a small package wrapped in brown paper. "I have something for you as well." Isaac looked surprised as he accepted the gift. "You didn't need to, I wanted to," she interrupted. "Open it." He carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a hand-knitted scarf in a deep blue that matched his eyes. "Virginia," he breathed, running his fingers over the soft wool. "When did you find time?" "While you were out with the cattle," she replied, pleased by his reaction. "Do you like it?" "It's perfect," he said, immediately wrapping it around his neck despite the warmth of the fire. "Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the flames dance in the hearth. Virginia gathered her courage, her heart pounding as she considered her next words carefully. "Isaac," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I've been thinking about our arrangement." He turned to look at her, his expression cautious. "Yes, it seems silly for you to sleep out here when there's plenty of room in the bedroom." She met his gaze steadily, though her cheeks burned. "You should sleep in your own bed." Isaac's eyes widened. "Virginia, are you saying—" "I'm saying I'd like to be a proper wife to you," she confirmed. "If you still want that." Isaac set aside his new scarf with careful movements, as if buying time to control his emotions. When he finally spoke, his voice was husky with feeling. "I've wanted that since the day you agreed to marry me," he admitted. "But only if you're certain, only if it's what you truly want." Virginia reached out to take his hand. "I am certain. You've been nothing but good to Hope and me. You gave us your name, your home, your protection. But more than that, you've given us your heart." She squeezed his fingers gently. "And I find that mine has been drawn to yours in return." Isaac's face transformed with joy. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a reverent kiss to her knuckles. "I never thought to find happiness again after losing my family," he said. "Never thought I'd have a second chance at love." "Is that what this is?" Virginia asked softly. "Love, for me, yes," Isaac answered without hesitation. "I love you, Virginia Lawson. I love our daughter. You've brought life back to this home and to me." Virginia felt tears well in her eyes. "I believe I love you too, Isaac. Not the same way I loved Thomas, that was different, the love of my youth. This is, deeper somehow, built on something real." Isaac moved closer, one hand rising to cup her cheek. "May I kiss you, properly this time?" Virginia nodded, closing her eyes as his lips met hers. Unlike the brief, chaste kiss at their wedding, this was a true meeting, tender yet passionate, a promise of the intimacy to come. That night, Isaac moved his things back into the main bedroom. With Hope sleeping peacefully in her crib nearby, husband and wife consummated their marriage, discovering in each other a passion neither had expected but both embraced wholeheartedly. As they lay together afterward, Virginia's head resting on Isaac's chest, she marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. 4 months ago, she had been dying in the desert, carrying a child and no hope. Now she had a husband who loved her, a healthy daughter, and a home filled with promise. "What are you thinking?" Isaac asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "That sometimes life's hardest trials lead to its greatest blessings," she replied, pressing a kiss to his skin. Spring came to the desert in a riot of wildflowers, just as Isaac had promised. Hope took her first stumbling steps across the porch as her parents watched proudly. The ranch prospered under Isaac's careful management, allowing them to hire additional hands and expand their herd. Virginia continued working at the mercantile 2 days a week, having discovered she enjoyed the mental challenge and social interaction. The rest of her time was devoted to her family and home, finding fulfillment in the life she had never expected but now cherished. On Hope's first birthday, as they celebrated with a small gathering of friends from town, Virginia took Isaac aside with news she had been saving for this special day. "I'm expecting again," she whispered, watching joy spread across his face. "Dr. Wells confirmed it yesterday. The baby should arrive in early spring." Isaac lifted her off her feet in an exuberant embrace, spinning her around before remembering her condition and setting her down gently. "Another child," he breathed, wonder in his voice. "Our child." Virginia placed her hands over his where they rested on her still flat stomach. "Our family is growing, just like everything else on this ranch. Best crop I ever planted," Isaac joked, earning a playful swat from his wife. Their second child, a son they named Thomas Isaac Lawson, was born on a clear April morning with considerably less drama than his sister's arrival. Dr. Wells attended the birth, pronouncing both mother and child perfectly healthy. "He has your eyes," Virginia noted as Isaac held his son for the first time, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "And your determination," Isaac replied, watching the newborn's fierce grip on his finger. "He'll be strong like his mother." As young Thomas grew alongside Hope, the Lawson Ranch expanded to become one of the most successful operations in the territory. Isaac's innovative water management techniques allowed him to raise crops as well as cattle, providing stability even in drought years. Virginia established a small school on their property, teaching not only their own children but those of their ranch hands and nearest neighbors. Her reputation for excellent education spread, eventually leading the town council to offer her the position of schoolmistress for Copper Springs' first proper school. "You should accept," Isaac urged when she hesitated over the offer. "You're a natural teacher. The children adore you." "But what about our family, the house?" Virginia protested. Isaac smiled, taking her hands in his. "Thomas will be starting school himself soon. Hope's already reading better than half the adults in town. And as for the house, we've managed to keep it running while you've been teaching the neighbor children. This won't be much different." So it was that Virginia Lawson, once a desperate widow facing death in the desert, became a respected educator and community leader, while her husband's ranching innovations earned him a place on the Territorial Agricultural Commission. Their family continued to grow with the addition of twin girls, Sarah and Elizabeth, 3 years after Thomas's birth. The original cabin was expanded to accommodate their growing family, but Isaac always insisted on preserving the original structure where he and Virginia had begun their life together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Virginia with a trip back east to visit her remaining family in Missouri, a journey she had long wished to make, but had always postponed due to the demands of their busy life. "The children are old enough now," he insisted as she protested the expense and trouble. "Hope can help manage things, and Mrs. Henderson has agreed to stay at the house while we're gone." The reunion with her siblings and their families was joyous, healing old wounds created by distance and time. Virginia returned to Arizona with a renewed appreciation for the life she and Isaac had built together. As they crossed into the territory on their journey home, Isaac guided their horses to a stop at the exact spot where he had found Virginia collapsed in the desert a decade earlier. "Do you remember?" he asked softly as they dismounted. Virginia nodded, gazing out at the seemingly endless expanse of sand and rock. "How could I forget? I was certain I would die here." Isaac took her hand, bringing it to his lips in a gesture that had become familiar over their years together. "Instead, we both found life." Virginia leaned against him, overwhelmed by gratitude for the man who had saved her in every possible way. "When I think of how close I came to never knowing you, never having our family—" "Don't," Isaac interrupted gently. "We found each other exactly when we were meant to. Everything that came before led us to that moment." Virginia turned in his arms, rising on her toes to kiss him properly. Though they were both now in their 40s, their passion for each other had never diminished. It had only deepened with shared experiences, challenges overcome together, and the family they had created. "I love you, Isaac Lawson," she said as they parted. "And I love you, Virginia Lawson," he replied, his blue eyes as bright and true as they had been on the day he'd offered her his name. They mounted their horses and continued toward home, where their children waited to hear stories of their journey. As the familiar silhouette of their ranch appeared on the horizon, Virginia felt a profound sense of completion. She had arrived in this harsh land carrying a child and no name, desperate and alone. Now she returned to a home filled with love, to children who bore the name of the man who had offered shelter when she needed it most. The desert that had nearly claimed her life had instead become the foundation for a life richer than she could have imagined. As they approached the ranch, Virginia could see their children racing down the path to meet them. Hope, now a beautiful young woman of 16, Thomas, a lanky boy of 14, and the 10-year-old twins with their matching braids flying behind them. "They've grown even in the few weeks we've been gone," Isaac marveled. Virginia smiled, spurring her horse forward to meet her family. "Time never stops, does it? But I wouldn't wish it to, not when each day brings new joys." That evening, with the children asleep and the house quiet, Virginia and Isaac sat on the porch where they had exchanged their wedding vows. The desert stretched before them, bathed in silver moonlight. "Do you ever regret it?" Isaac asked unexpectedly. "Staying here instead of continuing to Phoenix as you'd planned," Virginia considered the question seriously before answering. "Not for a moment. This is where I was meant to be." She took his hand, tracing the lines etched by years of hard work, "where we were meant to be." Isaac's smile held all the love and contentment of their shared years. "From the moment I found you in the desert, I think I knew you were my second chance. I just never imagined how completely you would transform my life." "We transformed each other," Virginia corrected gently. "You were carrying grief and loneliness. I was carrying a child and no name." Isaac completed the thought, his voice filled with tenderness as he repeated the words that had changed both their lives. "Then take mine and rest." Virginia rested her head against his shoulder, watching the stars spread across the vast Arizona sky. In the silence of the desert night, surrounded by the home they had built together, She knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just a name, but a destiny more beautiful than anything she could have imagined in those desperate days so long ago. And in the years that followed, as their children grew and began families of their own, as Copper Springs developed from a rough frontier town into a thriving community, as Isaac's hair turned silver and Virginia's face gained the gentle lines of a life well lived, they remained each other's strength and comfort, proof that sometimes the most unpromising beginnings can lead to the most extraordinary journeys. Hope Lawson eventually married the son of Dr. Wells and took over the town school when Virginia retired. Thomas followed in his father's footsteps, expanding the ranch and introducing new breeding techniques that made the Lawson name known throughout the territory. The twins pursued different paths, Sarah becoming a nurse who worked alongside the new doctor in Copper Springs, while Elizabeth's artistic talents took her to San Francisco, though she returned home frequently with stories of the wider world. In their later years, Isaac and Virginia watched with quiet pride as their grandchildren played in the same yard where Hope had taken her first steps. The original cabin, though now part of a much larger house, remained the heart of their home, a testament to second chances and unexpected blessings. And sometimes, on clear desert nights, they would sit together on the porch, hands clasped as they had been for decades, and remember how it all began with a woman carrying a child and no name, and a cowboy who offered both rest and a future neither could have foreseen but both had cherished every day since.